Alright, so a few days ago we talked about the downfall of Brazil over the last 2 decades. Their squads have gotten worse, they've become too reliant on one player, and most recently they've lost more games than they've won, and they're on the verge of not even qualifying for the 2026 World Cup. It obviously wasn't always this bad though. Brazil is one of the most legendary football countries ever. They haven't had a World Cup that could really be considered a success in a long time, but the last time they did, it was really special. The 2002 World Cup was generally a pretty weird one, I'm not gonna lie, for numerous reasons. There was South Korea with the most obvious case of cheating I've ever seen in my life. I don't know who they thought they was fooling, bro. The Spain game was bad, but the Italy game was outrageous. There was also that stacked France team that absolutely crashed and burned in the group stage, and that Argentina team that came in as one of the favorites and got fried in the group stage too. 2002 Brazil team was so good that a lot of people look back and think they came in as the favorites, but they actually didn't. They lost 6 games in the qualifiers and actually almost missed the tournament entirely. Only 3 points separated them from sixth place Colombia. It didn't help that Brazil's manager, Luis Scolari, created even more controversy by leaving Romario out of the World Cup squad. Romario was 36, but he was still very good. I'm pretty sure he was averaging like over a goal per game or something for Vasco da Gama, his Brazilian club. Scolari said the main reason he left Romario out of the squad was because Romario refused to play in the 2001 Copa America due to surgery. Instead of getting the surgery though, this motherfucker postponed it to go to Mexico and play with Vasco da Gama. Brazil got fucked up in the quarterfinals by Honduras, and Scolari almost lost his job, so it's understandable why he was a little salty. Shit, I would be mad too. Scolari's decision caused a lot of controversy, which is understandable considering how much of a legend Romario was in Brazil. He led them to a World Cup before in 1994. He'd already missed the World Cup back in 98 because of injury, so it makes sense why he was so hurt by the decision. It was his last chance to win another one. I read somewhere that he literally cried on TV multiple times at one point. It's even crazier because they might not have even qualified if not for Romario. He had a hat-trick and a super hat-trick in the qualifiers, and there was another game where he scored Brazil's only goal in a draw. Everybody was trying to force Scolari to change his mind. I mean, everybody. This dude was every Brazilian's biggest op that entire spring. He had absolutely no supporters. The papers were calling him crazy. The fans wanted his head. His own players was telling him he was bugging out behind the scenes. Even the president was like, all right, bro, you tweaking. He somehow didn't fold, though. I got to respect that because when I say this dude had nobody on his side, I mean there was absolutely nobody. Everybody knew it was raps for him if they lost, though. There was literally no way he was keeping that job if they were anything less than champions. It's crazy because even without one of their country's best players, this Brazil team is arguably the most stacked national team ever. You look at them on paper and think, how are they not the favorites? But you got to look at the context. Rivaldo was 30 and he just finished his last season at Barcelona. He was still great, but he was definitely out of his prime. Ronaldo was beyond injury prone at that point. He had been stacking up major injuries for 3 or 4 years. He didn't even play a single game in the 2000 to 2001 season. Even if he could stay healthy, everybody expected him to be a shell of himself. Ronaldinho was only 21 and he just played his first season in Europe for PSG. He was still a very good player, clearly, but the World Cup was a whole different stage. I don't know if people expect him to perform as good as he did. Kaká was still a baby. He hadn't even joined AC Milan yet. Looking back, it may seem like they were the easy favorites, but they weren't. There was France, the defending champions, Zidane, Henry, Vieira, Desailly, Makelele, Wiltord. I mean, god damn. This team getting grouped is a crime, but that's a video for a whole nother day. Argentina only lost 1 qualifying game, and they were definitely looked at as the best team coming out of South America. As a matter of fact, Brazil wasn't even a top 3 favorite according to the pre-tournament odds. First was Argentina, second was France, and third was Italy. Brazil was coming into this tournament with a chip on their shoulder, especially Ronaldo. Not only did he have to prove that he wasn't washed, he had to make up for the 1998 World Cup final. For those of you who don't remember, Brazil was about to play France, and out of nowhere, Ronaldo started tweaking in his room, like foaming at the mouth and shaking and shit. Some people think it was an anxiety-induced seizure. A few people think he got poisoned. Either way, he played in the final even though he was clearly not okay, and he played like shit. Brazil got mopped by France, and Ronaldo needed to get his get back in 2002. So we finally move on to the tournament itself. The roster is set. Everything is in place. Everybody's ready to play. They got their game day haircuts and everything. I'm gonna be real though. Some of them shits was ass. Cafu's hairline doing cartwheels. Rivaldo's hairline doing jumping jacks. Ronaldo, you get a pass because you did that shit later on, and it was on purpose, so you got it. Roberto Carlos bald as shit. Marcos, what the fuck is going on up there? Like, for real, I'm concerned. Kaká, I love you, bro, but hell nah. He showed up looking like Greg Heffley. I mean, what is going on? None of that shit mattered once they started playing, though. Boy, they was out there grilling motherfuckers. Oh, my God. Their first game was against Turkey. The end of this game was funny as hell. Most of it was good, though. Brazil kind of got off to a slow start, but around the end of the first half, they picked it up. Juninho was great in the first half, both offensively and defensively. He obviously wasn't one of the best Brazil players at this World Cup, but he was definitely underrated. He's almost never mentioned, partially because of the more popular Brazilian that shares his name. Brazil picked it up towards the end of the first half and carried it into the second half. That devious triple off front three was really harassing them, but it was Turkey that struck first with a great Hassan Sass goal. Speaking of Sass, he was really grilling Brazil this game. He's not really a player that gets talked about ever, but you wouldn't know it from this game. He was doing that defense bad. This dude was baking them so badly here that they just said fuck it and fouled him. Ronaldo and Rivaldo eventually broke through though, and suddenly it was tied. Ronaldinho scored the winner later near the end of the game on a questionable penalty. It's debatable whether it was even in the box or not, but it's also debatable whether it's a red. I don't really think so. Turkey got another red later for a player kicking the ball at Rivaldo, who gave one of the most hilarious performances of all time. I don't know if I'm more mad at the fact that he even tried that flop or the fact that it worked. Ref's always been dumb as hell, because how the fuck this shit happen right next to you and you don't see that clear-ass flop? He holding his face and the shit didn't even come nowhere close. It would have been a red anyway, so whatever, but this shit was still hilarious. Brazil versus China was way closer than the score suggested. China actually played well, especially early on. It was keeping up with Brazil and putting a lot of pressure on their defense early on. This was the Roberto Carlos game, though. That boy was on one. His free kick was an absolute rocket. That got Brazil on the board, and it was raps. He was good the entire game, mainly offensively. Cafu was great, as usual, on both sides of the ball. Rocky Jr. made a couple great stops late. This Brazilian defense really responded well to a Chinese attack that was low-key on their ass for a lot of the game. Brazil versus Costa Rica was probably my favorite game of the entire tournament, if we're talking about straight-up entertainment. Costa Rica needed at least a point to confirm that they were getting through to the round of 16. If they lost, there was a chance Turkey could get second in the group ahead of them. They came out and were absolutely playing for their lives. Meanwhile, Brazil was already through, so they was just out there doing whatever the fuck. It was hilarious. Brazil had some of their bench warmers out there, and they were just playing with them. Junior torched Costa Rica this game. I think he had like a goal and 2 assists or something. Even Baby Kaka got playing time. It was a slaughter. Scolari brave for leaving Ronaldo out there most of the game. I don't know what he was thinking. He had a brace, but on that first goal, he almost obliterated his ACL. Then later on in the second half, he almost decimated his shit again. He is too fragile to be doing all that, bro. Go take a seat and chill out. Y'all got 4 whole games left. Brazil moved on to the knockouts, where their first game was against Belgium. They won, but again, it wasn't without controversy. This time it was for a bullshit disallowed goal for Belgium in the first half. I'm gonna be real with y'all. Belgium kind of got hold. I'm sorry, but where the fuck was the foul? If I was a Belgium fan, I would be heated. No VAR back then, so that's tough, even though I don't even know if VAR would have saved that. We all know how stupid they be behind them screens. Whether it was a foul or not, which it wasn't, Rivaldo still scored an absolutely filthy goal later in the game, and then Ronaldo got a bucket too, and Brazil won a game where they were low-key outplayed for most of it. Now we move on to what was low-key the best game Brazil played in this tournament. Brazil versus Costa Rica is my favorite, but this was definitely actually a better game. England scored first because of an unfortunate mistake by Lucio that Michael Owen took advantage of. Lucio was occasionally mistake-prone in this tournament, I won't lie, but he always made up for it not long after. Earlier in the tournament against Turkey, he fucked up, but he recovered like right away. Here he messed up and England scored, but later on he made a crucial stop in the box to prevent a shot from point-blank range. Ashley Cole versus Ronaldinho was a good matchup. Well, at least at first. Cole was low-key strapping him at times, but it didn't last too long. Ronaldinho cooked him badly on that crazy-ass run that ended up in him assisting Rivaldo for the game-tying goal. Ronaldinho wasn't done, though. We know what happened next. That wild free kick that he later admitted wasn't even on purpose. Ronaldinho later on said he meant to shoot it, but not on that side of the net. Either way, it went through, partially because Seaman had a vertical jump of about 2 inches. Ronaldinho was on England's ass, I'm not gonna lie. I know they were relieved when he got that red card. It was a bullshit red card, by the way. Kind of a soft call, but Brazil won anyway, so I don't think they're too torn up about it. On to the semis, where the Turkish keeper played completely out of his mind. If not for him, Turkey probably gets mopped, I'm not gonna lie. He was incredible. Not enough to stop the inevitable Ronaldo goal, though. This was the first game he played in that iconic, ugly-ass haircut. He came out a few years ago, though, and said he did it to distract from a new injury that everybody was talking about. He scored all the rest of Brazil's goals in the tournament, though, so you could say it worked. In the final, Brazil took on a Germany team that was honestly pretty weak compared to most other German teams in the history of the country. The strongest point was the all-time great keeper, Oliver Kahn, who conceded like 1 goal that whole tournament up to that point, I think. Kahn had a great first half, but it was his mistake that gave up the first Ronaldo goal. Ronaldo later scored a second, and it was raps after that. It's important to remember that Marcos made a fantastic save when the game was still scoreless to keep it that way not long after halftime. Kleberson was also on it this game, especially in the first half. He was doing some nasty work. It wasn't that crazy of a final, but it wasn't a bad match. Nothing too wild happened. I mean, unless you count Ed Milson forgetting how to put his shirt on. It was overall a great tournament from a Brazil squad that came in without as much expectation as they usually have. A lot of people think Brazil's competition was kind of weak, but that wasn't really their fault. After France and Argentina got grouped, the strongest teams left were Brazil, England, Italy, and Spain. Both Spain and Italy fell victim to absurd refereeing in their games against South Korea, so that really just left England, who Brazil beat even though they had 10 men for almost half the game. So Are they the filthiest World Cup squad ever? If I'm being honest, I say yeah. You can argue that they're not the best, but in terms of pure entertainment, skill, and the number of absolute legends on one squad, yeah, I'm taking them over any other national team. That front three of Rivaldo, Ronaldinho, and Ronaldo is without a doubt in contention for best front three in the history of the sport. People don't talk about their defense enough, though. They only conceded one goal in the knockouts. Even the other three goals they conceded in the group stage were meh. The Turkey one was valid, but the other two came against Costa Rica in a whatever game that they didn't even really care about for real. When you compare them to other Brazilian teams, they're easily the number one Brazil team of all time, in my opinion. I don't think it's fair to go back too far in history with direct comparisons, so no, I'm not disrespecting any Pele teams here. The 1994 team was good, led by Romario and Bebeto, but it was nowhere near the 2002 teams in terms of depth and overall talent. It says a lot about the quality of the team when the shady refereeing and questionable moments throughout the overall tournament are completely overshadowed by the straight-up talent of one team. I know that French team was relieved that Brazil did that good because way less people talk about their absolute shit show because of that. Brazil isn't getting anywhere near this level again anytime soon unless they make a drastic 180 from where they are now. Until then, Brazilians can really only reminisce on the good old days.